Hi there, geometry students. This is Hefty here. We are still in chapter 4 and we are focusing on our triangles and we're talking about congruent triangles today. And I have drawn two congruent triangles, one on the left and one on the right. You don't have them in your notes and that's okay. How do you know they're congruent? If you look, you can tell that the angles are the same, 40 and 40, 20 and 20, and 120 and 120. And then my lengths of my sides are also equal, 14, 14, 7, 7, and 3, 3. I could even take and rotate this one, and I could place it on top if I wanted to. When you were little, maybe if you needed to tell if something was equal or not, you might have held two pieces of paper up to a window through the light. You could tell then. So what does it take to have two triangles congruent? You've got to have three sets of corresponding angles congruent and three sets of corresponding sides congruent. So do you see here my corresponding angles would be this 40 and this 40, and then 20 and 20, and then the 120 and the 120. So I need three sets of them to be congruent, and then I need three sets of corresponding sides. So that'd be my 14 and my 14, my 7, my 7, and my 3 and my 3. So in your notes packet, you have two triangles there, and now we need to name the corresponding angles and the corresponding sides. So when I'm looking at my angles there, I'm looking at my angle B, and what angle goes with B in the triangle on the right? You can see it has the double marking, so angle S, and those are going to be congruent. And then what goes with A? Angle A has a single marking, so you're going to take R and have it go with it. And then our last angle is angle C, and C has a triple marking, so I'm going to take the triple angle marking, which is angle T. So this time I don't have numbers in there to represent the angles being equal, but I can tell by my congruent markings. For my sides, I have AB, which has a single marking, so I'm looking for the single marking, which is RS. And then I take my other side, which I'm going to use AC. AC has a double marking, so I'm going to go with my double marking, which is RT. And then my last one is BC, and BC has a triple, so I'm going to go with my triple, which is ST. Those are congruent, corresponding parts are congruent. So we should have congruent symbols there, not equal symbols. So now, if you have two triangles congruent, if and only if there are three pairs of corresponding angles congruent and three pairs of corresponding sides congruent. So you have this up above. I've drawn it again. So I have three sets of angles congruent, and I have three sets of sides congruent. So then what that means is I can go on to name my triangles to be congruent. So if I have three sets of angles congruent, corresponding angles congruent, and then if I have three sets of corresponding sides congruent, then I can name my triangles congruent. Now notice when I do that, I'm starting here with angle A. Angle A has a single marking, so I'm going to go with my corresponding part, which is R. And then I did B second, B a second, which has a double marking, so I'm going to go with my second one, which has a double marking, S. And then the leftover one is C, which has triple, and T also has triple. So I have to match my corresponding parts as I'm writing down my triangle congruency. So let's take a look at example number 1. I'm given triangle. Notice I have two X's in there. Cross that out and make that be a Z. ZYX, and in your notes packet, my congruent symbol did not come through, so make sure you write congruent there, is congruent to triangle RFT. This time, I need to match the corresponding part. So what I'm asking you to find is XY. What is it congruent to? XY are the last two letters in this triangle. So I'm going to match it up with the corresponding parts here, which is the F and the T. Now I started with X, so I must start with the T and then F. I'm looking for angle R. What corresponds with angle R? R is the first letter in that triangle, so I'm going to match it with the corresponding part, which in this one then is the first letter, and that is Z. The last thing I'm looking for is the side that corresponds with TR. TR goes like that. So I'm going to look at my first triangle. I'm going to go from the back to the last spot to the first spot. So I'm going to write XZ down. So you don't have to draw triangles, you just have to match up the parts for those. Third angle theorem states that if two angles in one triangle are congruent to two angles in the second triangle, then the third angle is going to be congruent. So let's just talk about this for just a minute here, guys. What that means is this, if this is 30 and this is 30 and this is 70 and that is 70, well, this is going to be 100, isn't it? So then that last angle is 80. This last angle is also going to be 80. So what that means is you can have two angles being congruent, then the third angle is going to be congruent. All right, let's take a look at our examples. In example number 2, show that the polygons are congruent by identifying all corresponding parts and then write a congruency statement. So I need to identify all congruent corresponding parts. So we need to name the corresponding angles. And then I need to do my corresponding sides. So when I look at my corresponding angles, none of my angles are marked congruent, so that's the first thing I'm going to need to do. I'm going to take my parallel lines here. I'm going to use this transversal. Oh, this is going to be hard for me if I write right on it. Erase that. I'm going to have to go like this so I can see my letters. I'm going to use this as my transversal. So this angle and that angle are alternate interior angles. We learned that last chapter. And if I have parallel lines, then my alternate interior angles are congruent. So I'm going to mark those. So now, I'm naming my corresponding angles here. So I need to identify those. Angle LKM is congruent to, and I'm naming this one right here, angle JMK. I have another set of parallel lines right here. This is my transversal. So I'm going to go from transversal to parallel line and from transversal to parallel line. So those angles are also congruent. So now I need to write those down. Those are my corresponding angles. Angle JKM congruent to angle LMK. Now I have two sets of angles being congruent, so my third set is also congruent. So now I can mark these, mark them with 3, and that's J and L. And because that's the only angle in the corner there at that vertice, I can just call it angle J congruent to angle L. Now give me a minute here. So now I need to name my sides congruent. They're marked, aren't they? KL has a single marking, KL. So I need to match up the single marking, which is JM. And then I need to go, I'm doing left and right now. I'm using KJ. Congruent, that has a double marking, so I mentioned up the double marking, which is LM. And this middle one does not have a marking, but it's a shared line. So it's called KM in the triangle at the top right-hand side, and it's also called KM in that bottom triangle. So I'm going to write KM congruent to KM. Now you have to write your congruency statement, and I don't have room down below, so I am going to write it right beside my rectangle. So now triangle, I'm going to start with J, I'm going to go up to K, and then I'm going over to M. So now congruent, that's my congruency statement, triangle. I need to start, I started with the double marking, so I need to, a triple marking. So I need to start with my triple marking, which is L. I went up to K, which went over the double marking side, so I need to go down the double marking side to M, and then I'm going over to K. So that's my congruency statement. That's what congruency statement is. It's triangle, dot, 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 equals triangle, dot, dot, dot. All right, let's take a look at example number 3. I'm given triangle ABC to be congruent to triangle DFE, and I need to find the values of X, and I need to find the values of Y. So in this example, when I look at the picture, I know the triangles are congruent because they've told me that. I've been given that. I'm looking for the X and the Y, so here is an expression, and there is an expression. Right? Now, which one do I want to find first, the X or the Y? I would want to find my Y first, because in this expression it has a Y and an X. I'm going to need to have that Y before I can find X. So angle F has the expression with the Y in it. What part in triangle ABC corresponds with it? And how would you tell? You would have to go up here to your congruency statement and say, okay, I need to find the part that matches with F. And maybe you're looking, you're going, I know it's going to be the obtuse angle, Mrs. Hefty. What about if you can't tell? You're going to have to come up here, people, and look. F is the middle letter, so I need to use B. So F is congruent to angle B. So now I can go ahead. I should write this down. This is communicating my mathematics. At this point now, 6y minus 7 equals 107. And I'm doing my algebra at this point. I've got 6y equals 114. I'm going to divide by 6. Y is 19. Now, if you need to, you could go back up here and just double check and see if you're going to get 107. You could take 6 times 19 minus 7 and see if you get 107. That would be a good way to check. Let's take a look at our last one now. I'm looking for FE. FE, so I come up here and I say FE is the last 2 letters, so I need BC equals BC. So now I'm going to take my 3y plus 2x equals 48.2. I'm going to do my algebra. I'm going to plug in 19. 3 times 19 plus 2x equals 48.2. 3 times 19 is 57 plus 2x equals 48.2. Moving my 57, 2x equals negative 4.4. X does equal, oopsie, that's 8. Getting the answer there. I'm running out of time. X equals negative 4.4 then. So you can get negative. If you plug that back into the expression 3y plus 2x, you will find that will give you 48.2. Remember that these two are supposed to be congruent, so I